Business as Unusual is a thought-provoking podcast that explores the innovative strategies, disruptive ideas, and unconventional practices driving successful leaders and companies in the ever-evolving world of modern business. Subscribe, comment, and share for weekly inspiration with our host, Aicila.
Hi, welcome to Business is Unusual. This is Aicila, and I'm here today with Krista. I'm very excited to have you on the show, Krista.
Thank you. Me too.
Before we dive into the nitty-gritty of the awesome work that you're doing, what's the last thing that you did for fun?
The last thing that I did for fun on Christmas Day, I have 6 children. All are very different. Some of them are typical teenagers and don't like to spend time with their family. But I was able somehow to get them all to come together to do something. We went to see the boys in the boat and eat Chinese food because I didn't want to cook. And I had a lot of fun. And they actually all came. So it was awesome. Yeah.
That sounds lovely.
Miracle. It was. It was really nice. My son with autism actually only was in the theater for the beginning and the end because he doesn't like that type of movie. But he was in the car and ate snacks, so he was still with us.
So I am so excited for you to tell people a little bit about what your business is and what we're going to talk about today.
Sure. So I am a nurse practitioner. I was a registered nurse for, I think, about 16 years before I went back to school. Got a job in primary care, family practice, did that for about 3 years, but was really disturbed by seeing people who did not take care of their health until something catastrophic happened. Sometimes it was because of finances. Sometimes it was just because our healthcare world does business, 8 or 9 to 5 when a lot of people are at work. And not everyone has the luxury of having a job that they can just take off. We have a lot of people in my community who are in manufacturing. You're penalized for being sick. You're penalized for being off the line. And it just was really disturbing. It really was a form of inspiration, though, to open this. For a long time, every morning I pray in my closet. And for a long period of time, I kept having this thought, you need to open a practice over in this building where I am. And I'm like, that's crazy. And I told my husband, he goes, you're going to think I'm crazy. And he said, yeah, you're right. You are crazy. Don't we have enough going on? But the space became available. So originally, my thought was just providing like low cost quality care at convenient hours. So I'm open every Thursday till 8. I'm open every Saturday. One of the upsides of COVID is that telehealth is a lot more accepted now and that technology is more available. But then as things evolved, that it wasn't really taking off the way that I hoped it would. And I realized the part of what I did that people really liked and seemed to be hungry for was what's called integrative health, where it's not all natural or all Western medicine. Like you take the best of both worlds, and a lot of people have to choose. And I really feel like there is good in both approaches. It just depends on the situation. And I also realized, interestingly, that I always thought people who didn't have insurance, it was just because they couldn't afford it. But we have a lot of people in my community. A big part of them, we have the largest Amish community in the United States is in this area. So they don't have insurance by choice. But then we have it's a rural area, a lot of people who just say, I'm self-employed, I'm a farmer, I'm whatever. Why would I pay all this money for insurance that's not even going to let me get the type of care I want to get,
Yeah.
So they belong to cost sharing programs that will kick in emergencies, but they don't want to spend a lot of money on a system that provides care that doesn't really align with their values. And I realize there are people who are paying cash for their health care because they want to spend their money at a place that aligns with how they like to be cared for. And interestingly, I have a fair number of patients who also have private insurance or Medicare or Medicaid, and they still choose to come here because they like how we practice. So one thing that a lot of people don't realize, and that I didn't realize before I was a provider, is that you'll hear people get upset because they don't take insurance or they don't this. The insurance company makes the rules, and really it's Medicare that makes the rules. So if I accepted insurance for my visits, say it was Medicare rates were $160, and so I billed Medicare $160, but they really actually were only going to reimburse me $100 because they don't reimburse full amounts. If I said, Sally over here doesn't have insurance, so I'm just going to charge her $100, they'd say, hey, that's insurance fraud. You can't charge them something different than you're charging us, even though they're not paying that. There are a lot of things, and on the flip side too, there are a lot of practices who don't accept self-pay at all. I've had friends who have gone to try to get healthcare other places and said, I have cash, I'll pay cash time of visit. They're like, no, we only do insurance. It is really hard to please everyone, and I really don't think you can. You can't really be a practice that does both. And one of the things that I realized too is by not accepting insurance, and if you have insurance, it'll still pay for your labs, your prescriptions, those sorts of things. Insurance dictates the care you provide. If I accept Medicare and I don't have a certain percentage of my Medicare patients with diabetes on 3 specific medications, metformin, a statin, and then either like lisinopril or losartan for blood pressure, they'll reduce my reimbursement rates.
That makes total sense.
Yeah. And you get paid more for prescribing more, ordering more tests. Like there are a lot of perverse financial incentives to provide unnecessary care. And I just, it was very affirming reading through your content about aligning with your values, because I realized even though I have this internal struggle because I don't like the business money part of it, like I don't like it, and I don't like charging people, and I don't like that healthcare is not as inexpensive as some people would like it to be because of all of the fees that we have. I mean, it's just, we can get into that later, but my values of being able to have quality time with my patients that isn't rushed, about being able to provide like individualized care and eliminate unnecessary things. Like this is the context that allows me to do that. Outside of this framework, I don't have that freedom.
As a patient, that bothered me, honestly, from the time I was a teenager. That you'd be with a doctor and the first thing they would do is figure out what your insurance covered. And I'm like, no, I want to figure out what I need. What's the best care that you think I need to thrive? And then let's start making compromises based on that. Not let's compromise and not even look at things that might be a good fit for you and your situation because your insurance says no.
And to grant you the grace and respect that you can make good decisions about your health, that you have the ability to do that. Because one other thing that I've learned through this is how insurance really jacks up prices. I don't know if you've seen GoodRx, the little app you can get where you put in a medication, you put in, I live in this area, I want this medication, I have this dose and I need this many tablets. And it'll give you a list of prices of different pharmacies. And you can have one medication that there's literally a couple $100 difference. So you can have a medication where I can go to CVS or I can go to the other pharmacy down the road and there's a couple $100 difference price. And I used to think medicine was a lot more like gas. Maybe there would be a couple of cents difference, but not hundreds of dollars. And sometimes it's cheaper to pay cash than to pay your insurance price. We help people work around that, not just what's your insurance, but how much does this med cost? Where do you live? If we send it to Drug Mart, you can save $60 on that. That takes time, though, helping people find ways to afford things.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I've always wanted medicine to be, a partnership. Like, you have all the information and study on, you went to school to learn this, and then you have all this practice. And I know me. And so the two of us, and because there's also the medical pieces, but there's also situations, and there's an ideal way to do things, and then there's what's actually going to work. Emily, and there's no use in having some ideal that never live up to
people to do, because you've got the financial piece, people's values, their past experience, And I remember being shocked the first time someone said, if I don't take X medication, are you going to fire me? I'm like, no. Why would I do that? But that had happened to them with another provider. They didn't want to take a specific diabetes medication. So they said, we won't take care of you. And I have only fired 2 patients just for being abusive toward my staff. So, but I'm not going to fire you because you don't, because what I recommend is not going to be the same for each person. It's going to be based on what are your values? What are your finances? What's your past experience and what's practical? I remember one of the best things I did was as an RN, I did home care for a while. And that was really eye-opening because you had on one end doctors who were writing orders, and then you see what it's like for someone to carry that out in their home. And I'm like, we've got these little ladies who weigh 90 pounds with COPD, and you're prescribing all these inhalers, and their hands are shaking, and they can't coordinate to press the puffer to get in the air. Like, what's the impact of these regimens and how realistic it is? It was really good to then be able to take the framework with everything I recommend. What's this, what are you likely to do? There's some people who I know I'm lucky if I'm going to get them to do things once a day. So I wouldn't be an idiot and prescribe something that they have to take 2 to 3 times a day because I know once a day is a big deal and we're just going to work on making that practical.
Yeah. Well, and I also know I'm not great at always noticing when I'm not well. Like I think lots of women have that, but I learned that about myself, and I had a series of strep infections several years ago, and a doctor was going to prescribe this very intense antibiotic, and they were like, well, you'll have to notice if you start to feel this because it can mean it's damaging your tendons. And I said, then you got to find something else, because I don't notice that until it has. Like I know this about myself. I would love that not to be true. And he kind of looked at me like, seriously? I'm just like, no, really, you're opening a can of worms here. I'll come back with tendon issues and I'll still have strep. So, and I get it. Like, I agree. Would it be great if that was not true? I'm working on it, but I've been working on it for a long time. It hasn't changed much. Let's not roll those dice today.
Right.
I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just being aware.
Earnest, and that's really helpful. I actually designed this thing recently. It's called the Pillars of Healing. And I have one in front of me here, but it's the 4 I's. So one of them, because we do a lot with chronic infections like Lyme disease and Bartonella, those sorts of things. And a lot of people just want to take a pill, get better. Just, they want things simple, but we have the infection, we have building your immune system, reducing inflammation. And then the last one is integrity, because you have to be honest with yourself and you have to be honest with your provider or it's not going to work. Because I have some people who are just not honest with themselves. And I have some people who I know are lying to me, which is kind of a waste of your time and money because I can't help you very much if we can't be straightforward about what you're experiencing, what you're actually doing or not doing. You're just not going to get well unless you have that piece. And I think you may not feel like you're not self-aware about your body, but you're self-aware enough to know that you're not aware. And that's a pretty big deal. That's a pretty big deal.
Thank you for that. So what does success look like to you? Like, is it just in your practice, or do you see other people modeling practices similarly, or?
So it's got a couple of different facets. If there's not balance, you're going to burn out and you're not going to have anything to give to anyone. So my definition of that has evolved over time. Part of that is I want to have a health home, basically, where people can come and be supported in healing. We do a lot with chronic illness. I want it to be not completely dependent on me because it has been until this point. And there's a lot of pressure in knowing if I get sick or have a family emergency or I'm in a car accident, who's going to see my patient? Who's going to generate revenue so that my employees get paid? That's a lot of stress. So I would like it to be able to function well with or without my presence. I can be gone for a week and things don't fall apart. And then I also want to have the balance where I'm putting in good, honest work, but I've got time with my family. And but at the beginning, it's a big investment. Financially, my husband's really supportive. We mortgaged our house to do this. I didn't pay myself for over 2 years. and then just a sacrifice of time, obviously. So as we're bringing some new providers on, I would love it if they can not only add to what we have to offer our patients, but give me some freedom. So if we went on a vacation for the first time since I opened it this year, but I was still doing telehealth the whole time we were gone. And I would love to not have to do that.
Yeah.
Because in reality, you realize if you don't have that balance, you're not going to be able to take good care of your patients for very long. You're going to expire.
Is one do business development consulting and or at coaching support, teamwork. I don't know how to, it's not really consulting because I care too much. But one of the things that I talk about, like I have the 3 values that I really try to implement with all of my clients and people I work with. And one of them is sustainability. And it's exactly that. Like my thing is, if it matters to you today, it's going to matter to you tomorrow. So part of how you spend your energy right now needs to include an understanding of tomorrow. And it also needs to include an understanding that you're a whole person. A lot of people that start a business like you do it because they're passionate about something. And I get it. I'm passionate about what I do. It just doesn't feel like work all the time. Even when it feels like work, it doesn't, because I feel so delighted that I get to do this. And yet, right? And yet at the same time, if I don't take a break, I don't have as much to offer. I'm not enjoying my kids or my friends, my community. Like there's so many other things that also do genuinely bring me joy and recharge me. And so I feel like that's so wise, like recognizing that you have to be sustainable as a person. You have to be a whole person in your life. Like that to me is like one of the big things that I feel like people who are solopreneurs or in smaller businesses need to really incorporate into themselves is like exactly that. People talk about work-life balance, but I think it's life balance when you're passionate like that, because it's not like you're sitting there wishing you could like go home. It's just you would like maybe to see your husband or hang out with your kids or take a nap.
Well, and be careful too what you offer, because you don't, like with health, and we have some really sick patients, training patients to be as self-sufficient as they can be, and that not everything's an emergency. And I have had to really back off at the beginning when we were so small. You could get back to people immediately. And I've had to really back off to not create that expectation, because that's not realistic and it's not really fair to us, because the whole time we're here, we're working hard, responding to messages, putting out fires, taking care of things, trying to facilitate care. And somebody has the expectation that I call them and I'll have an instant response. Then they're going to be upset if it takes a day sometimes. And guess what? That's reality. And you have to learn to plan ahead. It's made me a better patient, realizing, yeah, it's really not fair of me to call when I took my last pill to ask for a refill. It happens sometimes, but I have to plan ahead and be respectful of everything that's going on behind the scenes, because I'm just much more intimate aware. Even then you could say, oh, how long does it take them to go in and send a refill? It takes a good 5 minutes. And if you've got 20 people who needed that, plus so-and-so's in the hospital, or there's just so many different pieces to it. So it's helped me, I think, be a more respectful consumer. I mean, I'd like to think I wasn't a terrible one, but it's made me much more intimately aware of everything that's going on behind the scene.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of. So we've all, I think, had experiences, especially medical providers, dealing with the medical industry. What's at the stage for you to see this as a need to take that action, right? Like, because I feel like there's experiences and identity, and we share that with a lot of people. But then the part of you that pulled that all together, or the moment that sort of inspired you to actually, what is it that sparked that for you?
It was really, that's a good question. It was really a leap of faith. And like I said, that inspiration, that idea that just kept coming to me, you need to do this, you need to do this. And I didn't have a clear vision then of what I'm doing now. I saw the first, and I learned as time went on, and there were meetings, I don't think they were chance meetings, of people who introduced me to one little thing that led me down a path that just opened the door. And I think what really drives me now is the idea that with chronic illness, there's always a root cause. And there are a lot of people who we've left behind and said, there's nothing we can do for you. You're going to be this way forever. And that's a lie. It's a lie.
Yeah.
I have seen, especially with mental health, some of what I've gone through and with my kids. And I don't even know if you and I have talked about this, known you for a long time. I had a patient she had gotten weaker and weaker over the course of a year. This is before she was my patient. And she had lost her ability to walk, and she had been to a prestigious medical center, had a complete workup, and they just came to the conclusion, well, you have ALS, there's nothing we can do. And that's a terminal diagnosis. And it was very unsettling to me because this lady had been so active and so healthy. And by many measures, I had just read a book about the role chronic infections can play in chronic disease, had her tested. She had Borrelia, which is Lyme disease, and Bartonella, which is another infection. I started going to conferences and I thought, this has got to be what's going on with some of my kids. This has got to be what's going on. We have spent tens of thousands of dollars on counselors, medication, hospitalization, all sorts of things. So come to find out that all 5 of my biological children have Babesia and Bartonella, these 2 infections spread by bugs, but that I gave it to them through pregnancy. And since we've treated that, the medicine I was taking for what has been diagnosed as bipolar disorder, I no longer need. I don't have anxiety anymore. My 21-year-old who has autism, and he's quirky, but after a year of treatment, he's out of his room talking to everyone. He's, Mom, I'm just a people person. He's like Mr. Different. My 25-year-old who had so much difficulty with rage and all of just severe disabling anxiety doesn't have rage anymore. My daughter's chronic migraines are gone. Like, all of these things have resolved by identifying and treating these infections. And the more I've dug into other things, I have a couple of different people, one in mind, particularly a young man. He was early 20s and he had bipolar disorder, but he was preoccupied per his parents with his bladder. He was preoccupied with his bladder. They had taken him to a urologist. They did testing. They said, there's nothing wrong with him. This is psychosis. We did some more in-depth testing and we found a very low level of an infection and we treated it, and his quote unquote psychosis is gone. He was preoccupied with his bladder because he knew something was wrong and it was driving him crazy. So the way he expressed it may have seemed unordinary, but people know their body. Something was wrong. And the test, the level that came back was very low, and some people would not have treated it. Most people wouldn't have, but it shouldn't have been there. And when we treated it, his symptoms went away. So I'm very driven by the fact a tagline has become, you were made to be whole, because I really believe that. There's some things we're not going to figure out in this life and going to have to live with, and we're mortal and things wear out, but there is a lot of chronic illness that we can't address and we can't improve. And if you look at drug development, almost all of it is for chronic disease. Nobody is coming up with a drug to cure diabetes that you won't have to take forever. It's all new expensive drugs to manage your diabetes that you'll have to take for the rest of your life. And some of them are great medications. I'm not saying that there aren't some good meds out there, but if you look at where all the money goes for development, it is not to cure things. It's to create medications that people will have to take forever. And that's disturbing to me. I did not used to be a conspiracy theorist, and I don't think I am, but I think I've just become much more aware to the role of profit and policy is driving your healthcare versus what's good for you as a person. So ultimately, even though you may have to on something spend more of your own money up front, in the long run, you're going to have a lot more money and you're going to have your health.
No, I agree with you on that. The profit motive. I genuinely think that the profit motive in healthcare is a real problem because it's not optional, right? But like what you're talking about, like the challenges of getting finding someone who has the care you need. Like I had some stuff going on cognitively to the point that my kid she was talking to her husband and my other kid about planning for my eventual, and
Wow.
I went to, I went to several doctors over the course of a few years, and it turned out that I was STIV12 deficient due to the acid medication that I've been on for 6 years, which I was on because I had very bad acid reflux. It was causing me genuine issues. And like now, 6 months later, so different. And it was B. But the symptoms that I had were extensive and scary. And I went to several doctors being like, I know something's wrong. And I didn't know what.
Right.
And finally, I found a doctor who's a partner with me and was like, all right, we're going to figure this out. And I was just like, that's great. I was prepared for things to be really bad.
Right. If you take something like nutrient deficiencies, I think that's really interesting because that's something that's sometimes really hard to get insurance to pay for testing. But it makes so much sense because all of those nutrients are building blocks. So when I'll do a big nutrient panel with people and I explain to them, I said, it's about, you can't make good chocolate chip cookies without enough chocolate chips or sugar or butter or whatever it is. And if you can balance your body and balance your cells by figuring out what's missing, because A, nobody's diet's perfect. B, even if your diet was perfect, our soil's nutrient depleted. If you've been ill or had a baby or had stress, that depletes things. And that's something that you can really just turn a corner for a lot of people just by addressing deficiencies. And the cognition is a big part of it. I think with mental health in general, I think if everybody could have a good nutrient panel, if we could rule out any infections, that it would be, it would really change the way the world goes around.
But that doesn't make as much money and that's the part where I think that understanding, and I pay some attention. I wouldn't say I'm, high level, but I take, but I didn't know that you could be not prescribing. Like, that's messed up.
Yeah, it really, and those medications that they're recommending, they have side effects. And some of them include like nutrient depletion, like your acid medicine. And what's crazy to me is going through school, going through your continuing ed and stuff, they don't teach you like, hey, your patients who take this medicine should supplement with B12. This person could become folate or magnesium deficient. And the one place that I remember taking one like continuing ed class where they did mention it, and they said, oh, do you recommend all of your patients who are taking this medicine take B12? And she said, oh, no, just check them, treat it when it gets low. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
That makes no sense. If somebody truly needs a medication but it's depleting a vital nutrient, but and I really do believe most people who practice have good intentions. They're doing the best that their training and experience has taught them. But there's a lot to be desired in that training, and there's become a really huge pushback against what we call nutraceuticals, using nutrients to treat. And you'll hear really shoddy studies quoted about it's proven vitamin C can't help a cold, and just throw things out. And what cracks me up is how, they're always like, these vitamin companies are just trying to make money off of you. And this from the medical pharmaceutical industry. Some of them are very good, but you have to take something that's quality, that targets what you need, can be absorbed. They're not comparing. There's a big difference between the vitamin C you get at the Dollar Tree and the one you get maybe from your health food store that's absorbed. There's just so many factors that make it really shoddy science, but that we're completely willing to just throw at people. Yeah. I remember asking one of our doctors once several years ago for my son to be tested for the MTHFR deficiency. It's like a genetic mutation that affects how your body can metabolize vitamins. Because my husband has it, it's associated with depression, and he wouldn't do it. He said, it's not that big of a deal. He said, plus we're finding that like 25% of people have it. And I'm thinking, 25% of people have diabetes. Do we say it's not a big deal because 25% of people have it? That's an easy fix. So, anyway, that's a whole rabbit hole of its own. But
no, I appreciate it. It's hard. I feel like there's genuine, understandable frustrations on all sides. And some of it you talked about earlier, and I want to call back to, is that as modern people, we believe we have the answers. And I think we get pretty upset when we run into something. And I'm speaking obviously at a macro level, not you personally like that, but we've gotten to this place of thinking we sort of know how things work. And actually we don't. It's a concept, and say, like, even as a doctor, nurse practitioner, even as a person educated and, seeks out information, that we actually don't know. And therefore we have to be open. And and I know there's a spectrum, but we do have to be open to taking in information and evaluating it as it comes in, and understanding the body is very complex. Like,
Right.
we can't assume. And once again, like you said, circumstances also affect things. And so that curiosity of, like, what's wrong? Why is it happening? How to investigate this, and trusting yourself.
And knowing that just because they may not come to the right ultimate conclusion, what's most important is that they know something's wrong and they advocate for it. I think when people get in trouble is when they go and they say, I know this is wrong, because
Right.
sometimes they're right, but if you know something's wrong. But one thing that I tell people to really beware of, I have a list of what I call just BS diagnoses, which are code for we don't know what it is, so we'll call it this. And one of them, anxiety, is a very real thing. But the number of people who have come to me with severe physical problems and they've had everything checked out, it's anxiety. I need to work on anxiety. And I'm like, okay, there's the anxiety that starts in your head and goes to your body, but there's also the anxiety. If something's wrong with your body, that's a survival instinct. Anxiety tells you something's wrong and you're unsettled and you have these physical symptoms because your body's teaching you something. And to try to meditate away that or medicate away that is really unfair, because maybe your heart is racing erratically sometimes and you have headaches because wrong. And that's why you feel quote unquote anxious. Mental health has always been really important to me, but I get really frustrated when I get the number of people who say I have all these physical problems and they've been basically told it's their fault.
Yeah.
My daughter, when she started getting really severe migraines when she was 10. She missed almost 2 months of school. She was super, super sick. And then I ended up taking her to the ER once. This was about 9 years ago, because she kept seeing red stuff. She's like, it's almost like there's blood in the streets. And that's her little girl way of describing seeing something different. So we go to the ER because I'm thinking, what if there's a tumor? Usually with visual things, they called it a hallucination, which I don't think it was. I think it was her saying she saw colors, but there's something organic going on. So I'm like, what if my daughter has a brain tumor? She's had all these headaches. He spent maybe 5 minutes with me, walked out, came back 5 minutes later, said, I talked to my attending and basically your daughter needs to see a psychiatrist. I said, I have no issue with psychiatrists, but there's something wrong with her. This is very different. And we had sought help for the anxiety. But again, then we go back and find out, wait a minute, she has all these infections. And as we've treated them and treated the nutrient deficiency, she's doing so much better. And most of the anxiety she has now is because of the way she was treated about things when it started. The school saying, oh, you're faking it, you're being dramatic, you're just, again, blaming the person who's sick. And that happens.
Yeah. No, it really does. And I'm glad that I love that you're doing this. I hope that this is more of a trend, as I feel like, and as you know, it's tricky. There are also people who will dismiss and I don't, and I think that's part of it, is that people need to feel that sense of knowing that they need to trust themselves. And then also, I look at it as a Gordian knot, because I'm like, I get it. Like, we want to have some regulation or oversight. And yet the way that it's folded right now, it seems like there's a lot more profit motive than care for the person's long term. And to call back to what you said about nutrients, like I like to use herbs as a supplement and a body support system. And I have to go and because it's regulated at all, so they could have like a drop of milk thistle in something, which has been proven to help with livers. But you can't just go buy milk. You have to look up and look who processes it appropriately so it doesn't damage the plant. who gets it third party tested to make sure it has what it says it has in it. And there's like 2 or 3 companies that do that, but there's 30 companies on the shelf.
Right. And good for you. But I think then the other side of that too is not then taking for granted if something is FDA approved, that
Right?
everything's great about it. Because if anyone in the public can prescribe to the FDA's newsletter, I think it's called MedWatch or something like that, where there's recalls all the time for devices, drugs, things that are found to be contaminated. And so it is just being that wise consumer. And how do you have that healthy degree of skepticism without being paranoid? Because that's not a good way to live either. That's really, at a certain time, you have to have some trust. You have to have some trust.
That balance of both is so, and why people don't do it. Like if you're exhausted or you're sick, so your mentality is, you have cognitive issues, or just frankly, you're exhausted because there's too much to do in the day and you're just trying to survive.
And then accepting too, with the number of kids I have and the sickness and all the years of stuff, we've got a lot of medical expenses, and realizing there's some things you can't cut corners on, like mentioned the milk thistle, but like probiotics. If I have somebody who has to take or chooses to take antibiotics for a longer period of time, if they have an infection that's taking a while to clear, there is not a cheap, high quality probiotic. It doesn't exist.
Right.
If you want a really good one, they cost more than I would like them to. And I'm not trying to, I hesitated for a while to carry supplements in our office because I didn't want to be a salesperson thing here. But I realized a lot of people, because they're tired, just want you to say, here it is, take it home. So I always try to frame things like, this is what I recommend. You can buy it here, you can buy it somewhere else, but this is what I recommend and why. These are some carry brands that I trust, because I know that not all of them you're getting what's being advertised.
Yeah. And that's honestly, like, that's what I want. Like I did a lot of research to find the healthcare provider that I did, because I knew something was wrong. And I was like, I can't figure the medical thing out, but I can find somebody. And I look for some, I use HealthGrade for comments like that are different. There was one guy that had like 30 statements that were like, no, I don't trust that. But I look for comments like they listened, they asked me questions about things I wasn't expecting. They found something I didn't think, like I didn't know. Like I look for that type of commentary. And there's usually not a lot. People don't leave a lot of reviews for doctors. It was just like, I want someone that I know is curious, that has the knowledge that you have, who's looking for the thing, because I can't evaluate a medical study.
It's fine. People come in and I've read it, because we have to do our own research and start someplace, but it's the willingness of the consumer and the provider, because both have to be willing to have a conversation, because you have to look for yourself. And there's nothing wrong with using Google, as long as you're also willing to have a conversation about it and dig a little deep versus, no, I believe nothing you said because this one article said that. But I have to give grace to people, because a lot of people have been burned by the medical system. They have reasons to be suspicious, and that's fair.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And I bet that helps people to get into that place of trust, and that once they trust you, then you can really have that partnership. But it has to go both ways. You also have to, like you said, trust them to be able to tell you the truth about what's going on and what they will actually do to address their issues.
And coming to a place too where you're okay as this case, a healthcare provider, but as a business owner in general, that it's okay if you lose some people. You're going to lose some people, you're going to gain some people. You have to have that integrity of, this is how we practice. This is why we do what we do. And it's okay if we're not for everyone. That's really okay. And it's okay too if somebody's not ready or willing to change or accept help, because what's the point of me pushing them if they're not in that cognitive or emotional place to make change? That we're here if you change your mind, or maybe they'll find someone else or something else, or maybe they're not able to take that step, and that's okay. That's up to them. Right.
Exactly. Can you share or tell me about advice you've received that influenced how you approach your work?
I remember I was a business coach when I was first starting up, and I was talking to someone about pricing, because that's something I've struggled with, because I'd give it all away if I could. And I had tried to figure out what's the bare minimum I could charge people and survive. And I remember someone saying, Krista, you've got to stop and look. If you charge enough that you're making a profit, then you'll have more to give away. Like in reality, you can help more people by charging a fair price. And it's not exorbitant. And there are people who have pushed back as we've had to raise our prices, but part of it's just because of the time we give. If you want a 15-minute appointment, you can go somewhere and get that. But all my appointments are at least a half hour. And then if somebody wants more time, we do an hour or more appointment. And you can't have it all. You can't pay $100 to sit with me for an hour, have my staff do all the follow-up, chase down your lab. It's not sustainable. I can't pay the bills and pay my staff and not be completely stressed. And so that's really helped me realize as long as I'm being fair, it's okay to charge a fair price, make a profit, because ultimately you'll be able to help a lot more people that way. You'll have a cushion so that if someone can't afford care, then you just say, you know what, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it.
Mm-hmm. I worked with a community called the post-growth entrepreneurship community. And one of the things that the founder talks about is the difference between profit, which is the money you need that's additional to kind of run your business and to have a cushion to invest, and profit, which is what they call extractive profit, that you pull out of the business so you can eventually build a spaceship or whatever. But actually, that what you're talking about is we have to understand there's nothing wrong with people being successful and financially viable and making a profit. Where it gets dicey is when they take it out of the community and they don't understand like that there's this whole group here that we're part of, and being more thoughtful of that. Right?
I want to attract and retain really good healthcare providers. We're never going to be able to pay. Someone's going to make working third shift at the hospital with shift differential. But if we have a comfortable profit and I can give my staff raises so that I keep really good people and I can help. One of the things I really like to invest in is their education so that we can do more continuing education things, grow the place that people want to work too. One of the things that I've prided myself in, it wasn't my intention, but I want this to be a really great place for moms to work because I am a mom. And so I've tried very hard. My other moms who work here work part-time to say, you have flexibility with your hours as long as you're consistent. These are the 2 days you can work. That's fine. Just be here those 2 days. If you can't come because there's emergency, just communicate. It's fine. I don't want to be crack the whip. These are the hours I need you here. And you are suffering because you're always going to miss Johnny's baseball game or whatever it is. I want this to be a place where you can flourish professionally and still have quality time for your family, where we can support you and you can support us. And I remember when I went back for my nursing degree, I had already had another degree that was not profitable at all. That made me employable. But I already had my son, Daniel. And I remember this one professor saying she thought the best employees were like part-time nurses who were stay-at-home moms because they were so like committed and focused when they were there, because for them, this was like a vacation. And it's true. If you're used to being home with kids and you're working a couple days a week, like you're the best employee ever. You're not burnt out because you're not there all the time. And as hard as it is, it's not as hard as wrangling little kids and keeping people alive and all of those emotional demands. So,
That's super wise. And I think the other thing is like the folks that I tend to work with in general in this group that I was part of is it's folks that want to do their business. They're not building something in the hopes of winning the investment lottery. This is actually what they want to do. And so they see themselves as more in a partnership with their employees and a partnership with their community for whatever it is that they're creating, and however big their community is.
And that really is the beauty of entrepreneurship, even though it's something I really didn't think I would ever have the guts to do. And there's some weight that comes with that, but the freedom of building something that you believe in and being able to serve people in a way that's meaningful to you, why would you not want to do it?
And you're in a profession that can be very draining and exhausting. Can you talk a little bit about what you do to keep yourself inspired or how you recharge so that you can come back refreshed to do this?
Yeah, so it's something I always struggle with because between the business, which a lot of weeks is 55 to 60 hours, and the kids, and you really have to carve time for that. I would say the things that help me the most are habits that I've had for a while. My husband and I, for 27 years, we go on a date every week, period. My kids just know we do. The more time that I make to care for my physical health, the better. And even if it's in small segments, but my body and mind work better if I take time to do even like 10-minute yoga or go on a walk or whatever it is. And then for me, a very big deal has been that I don't work on Sundays, and it has been such a blessing because to have a day where I've chosen to leave work behind and say there's 6 other days to do this day is different. Mondays are the best day of the week because of that. And it really does help me to recharge because, there's always stuff I could done. It's not, I don't take a break on Sundays because everything's taken care of, but taking that purposeful space for things that are more important to me with my faith and my family and just my health has really sustained me in unexpected ways. I've always enjoyed our Sabbath traditions, but with this job, because I do work 6 other days of the week pretty much all the time, even if I have a quote unquote day off, it's been very sustaining and rejuvenating.
That sounds really wise and very refreshing. I feel that.
Yeah.
So for folks that are listening, or I know that you're more of a physical business, but folks, you're in Ohio, right? Like that are like, hey, I need that. Or how do they find you? Follow your company, get in touch.
Licensed. You have a license. Yeah, we're working on getting licensed in some other states for telehealth. But really, if you go to our website, which is ahpclinics.com, you can reach out there. We are working on getting a blog up. So if you go there now, there'll be nothing there, but I purchased the domain. So that maybe saying this on air will motivate me because I have a son who's helping me now, but it's madetobewhole.com. So made 2 bewhole.com, and hopefully a podcast in the next year.
Nice. Well, if you need support on that, talk to me because I love podcasts. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And I really appreciate you taking your time this morning, Krista. It was so great to catch up with you.